Great. Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's 4 p.m. on a beautiful day in Vancouver, so everyone's probably getting ready for happy hour, but I'm very excited for our conversation today, where we'll talk about how the public and private sectors can team up to really build Canada's tech ecosystem. This is such a timely topic as our governments and businesses try to tackle innovation, productivity, and growth challenges with tech as a crucial driver. And we have 3 accomplished public and private sector leaders to talk us through it today. Before we dive into our conversation, perhaps we could have each panelist very briefly introduce themselves and their work. Serena, can we start with you and perhaps move down the line?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Good to see everybody. My name is Serena Nguyen. I'm with Digital. And for those of you who don't know what Digital is one of the global innovation clusters that the government in Canada invested in. We're here to help commercialize made in Canada digital solutions and hopefully become more globally competitive in the process.
Hi, I'm Deputy Mayor Harkirat Singh, representing the city of Brampton. We have a population of about 800,000 people. Yeah, I got some round of applause. We also are the most diverse city in Canada and one of the youngest as well. And I'm also founder of the MedTech Task Force at the city of Brampton and also founder of an affordable housing project, building over 100 affordable housing residential units in the city as well.
Wow, I get to follow that. That's fantastic. Sheila Schindel, I'm with Innovate BC. For those not familiar, we're a Crown Corporation here. We provide a number of grant programs and business building programs in BC to help support SMEs and really help drive the tech economy here.
Well, wonderful. You know, it's been an eventful year in Canada, to say the least. We kicked off the year with Donald Trump slapping tariffs on Canadian goods and then threatening Canadian sovereignty. We recently had an election, and now we have a new government on Parliament Hill. So in this context, as Canada rethinks its relationships and role on the global stage, what do we mean when we talk about creating resilient, innovative, and secure tech ecosystems, and what are the building blocks of that? This question is open to all the panelists.
Since it's a government-related question, maybe I'll start.
Go, please.
So I think as elected officials in particular, we've all been quite shocked about some of the rhetoric coming out of our southerly neighbors. And federal election and in Brampton, our provincial election was really based around and was very reactionary to the rhetoric that was happening. But to make a resilient sort of ecosystem and economy, I think it's about having good relationships from municipal to provincial to federal. That alignment is very critical, and we've seen that at the city of Brampton as many of our projects, including those based around encouraging small businesses to enter, are based around collaboration, financially and through resources. So I think for me, the most important thing is breaking down barriers, just like we responded to COVID, rolling up your sleeves, getting it done, and working for municipal, provincial, and federal.
I'm happy to jump in there. So when I think about what it takes to build a resilient and secure innovation economy, we have to put that into the Canadian context. Because of the relationship that we had with our neighbors to the south, it's very easy to get caught in the headlines of what is happening in the incredible Silicon Valley. We try to call ourselves the Silicon Valley of the North. Mm-hmm. But when I put that in the Canadian context, if we want to build resilience here, we also have to recognize and be really honest about what is the conditions for success in Canada. We are more risk adverse. That is just something that is innately culturally Canadian. And it's not for lack of desire and intentionality to be innovative leaders. We have visionaries in this audience and in this whole conference that are leading incredible digital solutions. So when I think about public and private sector collaboration, building that resilience, it's recognizing that, one, we have a culture that is a little bit more risk adverse, which means as a public and private sector partnership, we have to help build that risk tolerance. 2, we also have a market size that isn't as competitive as our neighbors to the south, so we have to be much more intentional and strategic about buying made in Canada solutions. You know, how great would it be if Canadian mining companies were buying Canadian mining solutions, digital solutions in the process. And part of that collaboration is how can we de-risk things through co-investment models? How can we bring best practice from province, city, and nationally to each other's regions and landscapes so that we can replicate those models? So for me, being really honest about the environment in which we're building that resiliency, and we have to admit that right now we've got to build that risk tolerance, change that culture in Canada to really go after those bold visionary solutions and support those made in Canada innovators.
I love to build off both parts because it's like we planned this. It's great. I think at Innovate BC, we look at resilience as being synonymous with adaptable. And having an ecosystem that's resilient is one that can learn, right? It's not static, which is a lot of SMEs. That's kind of what you do. You have to build and learn and adapt as you go. And so being able to support things that learn, evolve, and scale. We actually drive a lot of programming, which is demand-driven and or building those pieces. So to your point of having, do we have environment here that will adopt the tech that's already being deployed, like tested? Do we provide the opportunities for those growth? And then how can we showcase that, across, just not in BC, but across Canada and then globally? So I think we would all love to do all the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah, thank you. So we've been entrusted with talking about today public-private partnerships that can advance the tech ecosystem. This is a pretty broad topic encompassing, various industries, government agencies, and agendas. So perhaps we can look to real-life examples of such partnerships. Can each of you perhaps give a case study of a successful PPP and talk about how you measured the success of such a partnership? How do you gauge whether it fostered innovation, delivered an improved public service, helped Canadian businesses bring their products to market, or helped keep Canadian IP and talent in the country?
Sure, I'll start this one too. The city of Brampton's been really leading the way on PPPs because in this climate, you have to be innovative in how you finance large projects. Have the largest transit facilities in the country coming in the area that I represent, specifically in the city as well, and that's a PPP as well. But an example of a PPP related to sort of the Web Summit is our friends here from the Cybersecurity Catalyst, and they have a booth here as well. And so for them, they had federal funding from our federal government of $10 million. Rogers, and that's why I'm saying the Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst matched the funding at $10 million. Then RBC gave $5 million, and the city of Brampton gave $5 million. So that had private sector partners and our local government and our federal government come together to create this wonderful cybersecurity catalyst, and you can view their booth here as well. And so how do you measure success? Well, you need numbers. You need to verify what the results are. And some stats, I just visited them last week. Some stats, they've have over 14,000 people in the ecosystem, over 700 people employed in cybersecurity that have come through that program, over 7,000 learners, and 80 startups from cybersecurity that have emerged. So when we look at how that money was used, it's these type of results we look for. And you asked a very important question. Sometimes we make the investment and we don't do the follow-up. But this case, we've been following up every year. We get updates at our council, so it's done in a very transparent way as well. And sort of that's how we're measuring the results. And please make sure you check them out.
Sheila?
Yeah, we have non-traditional P3 type arrangements with our programming, but the partnership is still the vital part of the conversation. And I think that is the core, I guess, the best part of it is how we enable partnerships to evolve and build and then graduate onto new and better things. We have some projects specifically around health, and the partnership really is around how do we engage with the health system, which is risk adverse for a lot of things, and how do we help them move forward. And so between us being provider of funding, the health system itself, and then tech providers who are engaging with that ecosystem in a new way, together they've developed something that is new for North America. It is potentially transformational to the health system on its own, just in terms of how they can service or share data, or even amongst the different units within the health system. So that's actually a potential to transform how we do business in the health space, and it's something that they're getting really excited about.
Awesome. That's a great segue. I swear we didn't plan this. We just met backstage, but I think healthcare is a great area to provide those examples of really effective PPPs. The example that we have at Digital is Swift Medical, which I think you would be familiar with, right? So I'll just rhyme off some stats here. So chronic wound care costs the healthcare system $4 billion a year, right? That's the cost to the healthcare system. 50% of all healthcare involve a wound of some shape or form. Well, through this co-investment model, Swift Medical was able to come up in 2021 with an AI-powered mobile application to be able to document, measure, and assess and monitor wounds. And that was as simple as taking your cell phone, taking a picture of it, and allowing that technology to be able to help document, monitor, and measure the progress of that wound care and recovery. On that, because of this co-investment model, Swift Medical was able to tap into hospital networks. We're able to, I think it was Bright Shares. We're able to talk and bring a consortium together with some Indigenous healthcare service providers as well to understand how do we make this more accessible across both urban and rural centers. And so right now, Swift Medical's telewound is now in 4,000 facilities. So when we talk about what does this success look like, 4,000 facilities, 21,000 users, 200,000 people served, and 33 million assessments to date. That's incredible, right? And so now when we talk about success with follow-on, I believe there's $9 million in follow-on funding to now advance the AI capabilities behind this, but also make sure that we're working with other networks and bringing these use cases to them to make it more accessible and more effective with different communities in the process.
Yeah, thank you for those successful case studies. I always appreciate a good set of statistics, so thank you for providing all the numbers to back that up. On the flip side, is anyone able to give an example of when perhaps a collaboration didn't work and maybe a project, stakeholders realized that the project was, better left to the private sector or vice versa? Canada recently appointed its first ever AI and digital innovation minister, and in my conversations with the tech community, while many welcome this move, some CEOs have mentioned, while it's great, maybe the government also needs to know when to just not take action. So I was just wondering if there's an example that any of you can share.
I would say, from our perspective, that there haven't been any that are not successful, but there's an opportunity to pivot. And I think that's truly innovative from an entrepreneurial space. Pivoting is just a new opportunity. But the outcomes of the pivot actually ended up being much more impactful than the original intent. So the butting out part, or like who's got what role or whatever, I think going back to the concept of the relationship piece, if there's open communication and transparency involved, the opportunity to change how you deploy ultimately can help garner how positive it's going to be and what sort of new opportunities are going to come out of it. So
I'm gonna. Hello. There we go. I'm gonna kind of challenge us a little bit. I think innovation by nature means there has to be some mistakes made along the way. And I just talked earlier about Canada's risk aversion, and that is where it is important. And kudos to our government for recognizing the culture that we currently operate within and dedicating a ministry to AI and innovation to build the risk tolerance of this country, right? And so I think that our private sector's partners play such an important role when it comes to trailblazing the innovations that are going to change key areas of our economy that we can lead in globally. But it's also up to public sector to recognize where we need to build infrastructure to de-risk this and build up the Canadian risk tolerance. If we are going to be globally competitive, we're also on a culture change as a country. And I think that that's really important. And that also means to your question about the challenge, that also means we as citizens have an opportunity to be more forgiving of our private and public sector who are trying to push the boundaries. Innovation means you're doing something that has never been done before or very rarely done. And so do we want to be a country that follows best practices, which is backward looking? Or do we have the talent and the boldness and the risk tolerance to be truly global innovators? And I've been in this sector for over 10 years. I can tell you our innovators are visionaries. They are coming up with solutions, and we need to provide the infrastructure for them to thrive in a very globally competitive ecosystem.
Yeah, you know, I've been around in government for almost 2 decades, and public-private partnerships, my thoughts when I started, I was very reluctant to explore them. But given necessities and important projects, especially in the city of Brampton, we really found our way. I'm very optimistic with our federal government's eagerness to get involved, but there is some anxiety, and I've been fielding some calls, whether that's from the tech sector or even housing. You know, there's a lot of rhetoric of the federal government doing actual housing. And I guess it's just fine-tuning that handoff of where the public sector is and where they hand it off to the private sector. I personally prefer where both have skin in the game and both are involved. I think that's the key recipe to success from what I've seen from investments from the federal and provincial level in our nonprofits or in the private sector. You know, just talking about Cybersecurity Catalyst, it had a lot of different stakeholders coming, rowing in the same direction. So the eagerness is welcomed, but I'm very cautious of how that's fine-tuned, and we'll be paying attention in the future.
Mm-hmm. And we know a little bit about Prime Minister Mark Carney's innovation agenda, and that AI, artificial intelligence and technology will play a crucial role in this administration and in driving Canadian growth. He wants the government to become more efficient by adopting AI. He's also promised tax cuts for SMEs that adopt AI and has pledged to continue Ottawa's $2 billion deployment to build AI and digital infrastructure. I'm looking at the time, and I'd love to talk about infrastructure, talent, and trust and everything today. There's a lot to unpack, but maybe in the spirit of the summit, since AI has been such a big theme, we can just try to tackle this final question. How can PPPs help SMEs adopt AI while, you know, helping create new jobs for Canadians and also help Canadians, you know, upskill and gain the skills they need in this new innovation economy?
I'm happy to lead off if that's helpful. So I think when we look at the Canadian ecosystem and where we are leaders and where we have some work to do, literacy, skills development around AI and our digital competency, our digital foundations are at the center of driving true innovation adoption. Part of the biggest challenges to see adoption happen is because it gets blocked through the procurement process, right? Because what are we buying? And do we understand it enough? And do we understand the risk behind it? And you know, there was a Salesforce report, I think in 2022 or 2023, that noted that Canada ranks 22 out of 100, or 33 out of 100, when it comes to digital skills, right? That's your foundations. That's the layer that AI is built upon, plus, every innovation across every sector. Well, if that's the case and the global average is 10 points higher than us, how do we catch our groups up? So it's incredibly important that PPP comes in and recognizes where we have talent gaps, co-invest in that to rapidly build it together, and ensure that it is informed by our industry sector. So at Digital, you know, the latest stats is that we've skilled over 18,000 Canadians, where that's landed jobs and or continuing education. It's 6 to 12-week program, and that's led by industry insights. What are the skills that our partners need today, and how can we drive those through the programs and the PPE types of collaboration to get those industry insights and expertise to inform the content and make sure that we're delivering that to all Canadians?
Yeah, I think you're going to see the AI adoption, when you talk about especially governments, happen faster at the city level than at the federal level. So I think cities are going to be transformed. They're not going to look like what they look like in the next 10 to 20 years. And a lot of that are going to be driven by two factors. One, the current funding model for cities is based on property tax, and that's not sustainable. We know that. Our federal bodies are advocating we need different models to finance cities. Property tax is not a sustainable model. So what happens when your revenue is going to go down? You have to innovate. You have to bring your cost pressures in line. And AI is going to play a big role. So I can tell you right now, at the city, we're working with private sector partners to look at where we can have savings in the future and where we can make the largest impact. And it's not just going to be Brampton. There's thousands of municipalities across the country, and you're going to see the adoption happen much faster at a municipal level than you are at a federal level.
I think I'd like to echo the upskilling part. I think but also how we play in the ecosystem. So some of the things that we've learned and some of the projects that we've been deploying so far is how testing out new tech in a space like the health space is actually changing the environment in which the tech operates. So for example, some of the data centers are encountering things that they've never done before. So by having some leaders, the risk, adverse things that are happening, going in and saying, hey, we want to try this thing, can you help us do it? Collaborating with the data center to go, okay, how do we build this properly so you can do it? Actually educates the data center and it educates the staff there. And so the upskilling is much broader than just, the direct people we're talking about who are building the tech and doing the things. It's actually educating the ecosystem. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to kind of think bigger as to what upskilling looks like, and the potential across the board is really quite something.
And it's certainly an exciting time for Canada, and looking forward to how all of you leaders here on stage and in the audience continue to help build Canada's tech ecosystem. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.